Today I want to talk about if you're in the market for a used sport utility vehicle, why you should buy a 2019 or a 2020. If you can't find a 2019 or a 2020, go older, not newer, and why we chose the Nissan Armada and why you should look at a Nissan Armada, definitely not a GM, definitely not a Jeep, and likely not a Ford. First and foremost, we've always been Ford buyers, so this is my partner's vehicle. And since 1998, she has driven Ford products. She had the first Ford Expedition that I ever saw. The first Ford Expedition I ever saw was my partner's 1998 Ford Eddie Bauer Expedition, because we have a family member that works for Ford, so she's been driving Ford since. And the reason you want to avoid 2021, 2022, and 2023 is the reason we ended up with this beautiful Armada. If you think back, we were all in COVID. 2020, they shut down everything. Everything got parked, and the plants could not get electronics parts because all of the electronics parts were getting used for gaming and PCs because we were all stuck at home buying stuff. And if you remember the terminology racetrack rot, that's where apparently, especially Ram, Jeep, and General Motors, they were partially building vehicles as far as they could in 2020 and 2021 and putting them out on NASCAR racetracks. And because of semi-metallic brake pads, the brakes were literally rusting together after several months of just sitting. And then when the parts would come in, they'd ship them to the dealer, and people would get these vehicles that were like, oh my gosh, what do you do now? And apparently the worst customer service stuff and the worst problems they had were in late 21 models and early 22 models. What we ended up doing is our dealer couldn't get us the Ford Expedition we were supposed to get in 2020, and they found out that the rental car companies were sitting on vehicles since nobody could go anywhere in the big cities, and some of the Midwestern areas people could move. But talk to anybody that lived in California, New York, Boston, they were buckled down. They couldn't move. So what we ended up with is this vehicle was an enterprise rent-a-car vehicle on the East Coast, and it got like 3,000 miles in its first year. It was built in late 2019 and it was 2020, and then we got it from a dealer that got it directly from Enterprise Rent-A-Car where nobody was using it, never had any real use or issues, and we've been driving it since. And I think we'll see inside it's got like 75,000 miles, and here it is in 2024, late 24. It's time for us to move on, and we're going to go with something new. But if you're going to go with a used sport ute, look for a 2019 or a 2020. Make sure you buy the Carfax. Try to find one that is either one owner or that was with a rental car company with no miles. Do not find one that was built and sat for months. You can find on the Carfax the VIN number, and you can Google that to get the build date, and then you can find the original delivery date. So if the thing was built and has an earlier VIN and then sat for months before it was ever delivered, you don't want that. That's racetrack rot. Stay away from it. Then the next thing that we found is that Nissan and Toyota decided if we can't build, we don't build. Whereas the other brands, I don't know if it was union contracts, the way they operate, they just did partial builds. And I really heard about this like with the Ford F-150s. They kept the plants going and they stacked these things outside and they built stuff that didn't move. And by the time the customers got it, the brakes were junk. The dealers had to take dash panels apart to put in controllers for power seats or delay wipers. So now the interiors are all screwed up. Stay away from that stuff. So if you're in the market for a used SUV, look for a 19 or a 20. And again, I think we did the right research and we came up with the Nissan Armada. The thing I like about the Armada is it doesn't have some 6-cylinder with a turbocharger or a V8 that shuts off 4 of the 8 cylinders and all this other goofy crap and shuts off when you come to an intersection. It's a strong performing V8. I think back to the younger days driving the real V8 Camaros and Mustangs. This is the closest thing I've driven to it. The new Mustang is like driving a Japanese hot rod. But this is the most hot rod vehicle that I've had fun driving in years. If you're not familiar with the Nissan, it's got the 5.6 V8 and it's hooked to a solid, snappy automatic transmission. And you can adjust inside if you want to be on all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive high, low, just like the good old days. Not all this new gizmo-y crap that ends up broken at the dealer and recalled. This vehicle has had no recalls. Look it up, no recalls. So if you look, the Nissan Armada really started as the Infiniti. So imagine if instead of saying, hey, we're going to make a Cadillac or Lincoln version of the Expedition or the Tahoe, it started out as their high end. This came out originally with this body style in 2014 as the Infiniti QX80. And they sold it as the Infiniti version for several years. And the Nissan Armada, if you look, they've got the older, squarer Nissan Armada because it was like built off the Titan pickup truck. But in 2018, I think it was, they started selling this as the Armada, not just the Infiniti. And today, in 2024, you can still buy this vehicle as the Nissan Armada and as the Infiniti QX. So it's a bulletproof platform. It was out there as the Infiniti from, I think, 2018. From 2014. And the Armada, they started in 18. Bulletproof vehicle. It actually has a roof rack. It has big 22-inch wheels. And it's got good wheel lips so that you don't get a bunch of dings. It's got good running boards, but they're in far enough so that you can use them to get in and out in icy snow, but they aren't a hassle if you're wearing nice clothes or your partner's wearing heels. Behind here is a full-size hitch receiver. Let me pull this panel off. And in there is the hitch receiver and the hookup and everything. And that's how that is. And I've only used it for towing on a boat a couple of times. And there, it's closed back up again. But I've pulled a small water ski boat a couple of times and it towed great. Incredible vehicle. And you can see it's got those sensors for backup. It doesn't just make noise. This sensor system actually does stop you from going forward as long as you have it turned on. And there's been a couple of times when it's kept me from backing into stuff. So let's talk about why you want this vehicle. Let's get inside and take a look a little bit. This thing has the interior space of a full Tahoe or Expedition. Backseat users do have control of their climate, and there is some pod things there. So, and in the back, it has these seats that you can adjust up, and you see there's still plenty of room in the back for your hockey equipment or your camping gear, or if you put the rack on the back, your bicycle gear. And you've got seating where you can put definitely 2, 3, 3. You can put 8 full-size people in this vehicle, and they're going to be as comfortable or more comfortable in here than they would be in a Tahoe. I've been on trips in both, and I've sat back here. This thing has more space than a Tahoe. It's right there with a Suburban, and definitely bigger than an Ford Explorer. Rear windshield wiper, so that stays clean. There's storage space in the back. Like I said, you can take these seats and power them up or power them down. The power seat thing is kind of gimmicky, and I think that's because it's the SL version. I can go into the versions a little bit to show you what are the features or not. You can see it's got all the climate stuff all the way to the third row. The third row passengers do not get ripped off. And underneath here, under this mat, there's a storage, and underneath this storage is and again, totally accessible, but yet still big seating for big adults or big kids, not some car if you're on a long trip. So on the inside, you got two program settings for the two different key fobs, so you can set the mirrors, the seat, and the radio and all that stuff for you or for who you're with. It does have the decent factory snap-in floor mats so that they're not moving around on you all the time. And once you're inside, there's a couple different versions of the Nissan Armada. And for those that aren't familiar with Nissan, GM would be LS, Z71, High Country, or Cadillac Escalade. Ford would be XL, XLT, and then probably Platinum. And then it'd be a Navigator version. Well, with the Nissan, you got the S, the SV, the SL, and the Platinum. So this is the SL that I would think would be like the Ford Platinum or the GM High Country. So you've got the push button start. As long as you got the key fob in your pocket. Oh, and it does have remote start. I should have showed the key fob. Let me pull the key fob out. Key fob has lock, unlock, remote start, and open the rear tailgate, and the alarm thing that drives you crazy when you got it in your pocket and you're doing something and your car goes off. You have these buttons up here to see the different settings: outside temperature, maintenance alerts, miles per gallon. This vehicle is pretty much used for driving around town and a people hauler, so we're only getting 16 miles in town. And you got these 360 miles of range right now. I think with a full tank, yeah, about 375. And then there's this other button for reset stuff. You can also come over here to the info if you've got that. I think if you have even the base version, you see that stuff. So I came back out here to use the remote start and the key fob. So with the key fob, you can see that you can either open the rear hatch or you can close the rear hatch. And the hatch stops if you stick your hand in. And then you can also do the remote start. If you lock it, hit the remote start twice, and it unlocks. And that's been great for us, with the Midwest winters, cold. And once you're inside, like I said, you got the couple of settings, and you can set it for yourself or for whoever your other driver is. Once you look to the display, you can go to the info setting, and the info setting, you can check your fuel economy, and you can see the history, and you can see, you can see she was getting like 30 miles a gallon on the highway. I don't know if that's accurate. And averaging 16 in town. And if you go back to info, go to tire pressure. This is the one I use all the time. Make sure your tires are set. This thing, I think the tire max pressure is 50, so I set them at 45. But they're cold right now, so 43, 44. And you can see your maintenance stuff. So you can see when it's due, coming due for an oil filter. And I set everything at 5,000 for oil change. And there's also other reminders for things like brakes and other stuff on there. So the system there isn't bad. And you've got the navigation, and you can set in, where you want to go. Or you can just go to the map and see where you are. So that's all pretty intuitive, works pretty well. Really, really kick stereo in here. And it does have the heated seats in the front, and it does have separate climate control left or right. Again, I think if you don't know Nissan, they've got the S version, which would be like a Ford XL or a Chevy Scottsdale. Then they've got the SV version, which would be like a Chevy Silverado or a Ford XLT. And then this is their SL version, which is more like a Lariat or a Platinum. You can see all the wood grain and everything, moonroof, all that kind of stuff, that if you get the higher version, you get those kind of things. So I did point out that when you put it in reverse, I gotta have the, if you try to take off, the steering wheel just moved and everything to my setting, because again, you can adjust it to telescope in and out or to up and down based on your personal preferences. All the cruise stuff is here and the stereo stuff on the dash. But what I meant to do is you got to have the foot on the brake when you take it and put it in reverse, or it shuts off. And what I really wanted to show you is the backup signals here. Let me look at this. If you drive ahead, it goes to nav, but if you put it in reverse, it puts it to the camera, and it's got the full around camera. And you see those red signals there? If the vehicle decides that you're going to hit something, the vehicle just stopped. I didn't stop. The vehicle stopped. It did it on its own. So that's really cool. And you can adjust the sensitivity to that on the dash. So there's a lot of those kind of features. But again, none of this nonsensical 2, 4, 6, 8 stuff that General Motors has screwed vehicles up. Not any turbochargers. This thing is a hot rod. It's a full solid V8 and it hauls. And again, it has really decent off-road capability. Not that we've used it too much in the woods, but see how it has 4 high, 4 low, tow mode, the kind of stuff that I think you have to go to a Ford Super Duty or to General Motors 3/4 ton to get that. Everything closes up nice. She's got all of her junk in here, but you can also just close it all back up again. I should be showing that as I do it. One neat feature is you can open the console from the front, or if you're sitting in the back seat, you can open the console from the back. There's a button on the back. Let me show that. Here's the console from the front. There's the console from the back. So that's kind of cool. And again, big solid interior. So if you've got big solid people and you want to go on a long road trip, this is it. Just listen to this thing. This is a cool vehicle, fun to drive, decent space, decent quality HVAC, really great stereo system that does link to, you can pick it to an iPod or Bluetooth audio, your phone, and decide whose phone you're going to listen to, put it on Spotify or Apple Tunes, and just jam. But listen to that. I'm sorry, you just cannot get that in a Ford Expedition or a Chevy Tahoe anymore. You really need to have the Nissan. This has been the most fun vehicle she's had to drive in probably since her 98 Expedition. I think everyone after that has been a big giant school bus. But this thing runs around like a hot rod car. And it hauls. And it fits into parking spaces, and it can go through parking ramps, and it can pull a boat. I think that this is going to be the most fun vehicle you buy if you're looking for a sport ute, to be able to go on trips, haul family, keep your family safe, and know that your partner's going to be able to drive it without being stuck with a giant school bus. This one has 75,000 miles. Again, I encourage you to buy the Carfax directly. If you buy this one from me, you'll see that it was delivered within a month of being built, and it was delivered to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and they must have rented it out a couple of times and put a couple thousand miles on it, at which point it went to an auction, got to my local dealer, my Ford dealer, who said, we can't get you any vehicles, COVID, and we luckily got this, and I had no idea what we were getting into, and because of this vehicle, we're done buying the Fords. We're gonna get another Nissan. So if you got questions, comments, feedback, put them down below. For those of you that came 252 weekends to see some of our travel videos, sorry, but I've been putting our vehicle sale videos on here for quite a while. Oh, the other one that I forgot to mention is that this is the only vehicle that I've ever had where